Welcome back to Pitch Please. This is our second episode. This is the podcast where we talk about movies, good and bad, and we talk about either a pitch to make it better or pitch a sequel that we'd want to see. I'm your co-host, Alex.
And I'm Troy. Everybody calls me Smitty, so
All right, yeah.
I'm going to throw that in there.
Yeah, might as well.
Even my mom hardly called me Troy.
That's true. That's true.
She didn't call me Smitty, though. But
No, but...
Well, hey, we want to let you know why we're here, what we're doing this for. And so there's a lot of things on YouTube and social media and podcasts that criticize movies and talk about all their flaws and their mistakes and stuff like that. And that's fun and that's well and good. But as filmmakers ourselves, we want to take a look at these problems and see how they could be fixed in the storytelling part or in the filmmaking part.
Yeah, I mean, criticizing, anyone can criticize, but it's not always an easy task to try to come up with a solution, so we're hoping to, throw our hat in the ring and try to come up with little solutions or brand new ideas entirely to movies that we either like or maybe thought could have used that extra push and would have gotten there if they'd had a few extra things. And so, yeah, if you love movies, you're in the right place because that's what we love.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about a movie on each episode. And then if we like the movie, then we're going to talk about a sequel to that movie. We're going to pitch a sequel to that movie, because hence the name Pitch Please. We'll pitch a sequel to it. If the movie had some issues to it that we thought needed to be overhauled, so to speak, then what we'll do is we'll pitch a new version of that same movie with our own ideas.
Yeah. No, we're not. Again, as you guys probably heard from the first episode, and if you haven't checked out our first episode, check it out. We did an episode on Gladiator 2, which went pretty well. It was pretty cool. So if you haven't seen that yet, go check it out before checking this one out. But yeah, we're not trying to be the first ones to watch a new movie and tell you whether or not you should see it. We think you should see all the movies that we talk about, good or bad. If you've seen them before, be seen before and are watching it after having seen it, great. If you haven't seen it and you're watching a video, go check it out afterwards because, a lot of work goes into making a movie, and it's just really, shows good respect to the filmmakers if you can watch what they make.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah. Filmmaking is such a complicated artistic medium. It's the most expensive artistic medium in existence.
Yes,
it requires the most people in most instances, so props to all the filmmakers and screenwriters out there.
Yeah.
And so now, episode 2 of Pitch Please. So, Alex, what movie? You want to let everybody know what movie we're doing this week?
Yeah, this week we decided that we wanted to look at Joker. The first one. The second one. Just note, we have not seen the second one. Since we have not seen the second one, we won't try to talk about it, fix it. We don't know anything about it.
Nope.
We won't talk on it. We're talking about the first one.
Okay.
So, we were talking about Joker this week. Yes! It was produced by Bradley Cooper, Todd Phillips, and Emma Tillinger-Koskoff. It was directed by Todd Phillips as well, and screenplay was by Todd Phillips, Scott Silver, Bob Kane, Bill Finger, and Jerry Robinson. The cinematography was done by Lawrence Sher, and the editing was by Jeff Groth. Production design by Mark Friedberg, and it stars Joaquin Phoenix, Robert De Niro, Zazie Beetz, and Francis Conroy. We were able to find a budget this time around, and the budget that we found on Box Office Mojo was $55 million for this first one. It was released in October 2nd of 2019, so that's, over 6 years ago?
Yeah.
5 years ago? 6 years ago?
Yeah.
Currently, it has grossed domestically a little over $335 million, and worldwide it has done a little over $1 billion.
That is insane return.
That's what you want, guys. The smaller the budget and the bigger the return is, the best possible thing you can have. Clearly.
And it's an art house movie, essentially.
Right? Yeah.
It's an art house movie that they didn't even want to. It wasn't even supposed to be made.
Right. No, that's right. It wasn't supposed to be made, and yeah, I remember hearing it toured the festival circuit and did really well there, and Joaquin Phoenix won an Oscar for Best Actor. Like it is a phenomenal film. It's a heavy film.
It's like a big, heavy, like Thanksgiving dinner.
It is as self-described, gritty character study film, and it truly is gritty. So, again, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really, really good. And if you have seen it, you're in for a treat.
Okay, I'm going to cover the synopsis here
Yeah.
real quick for us. Arthur Fleck, a struggling professional clown and aspiring comedian in Gotham City, lives with his mother Penny amidst rampant crime and economic hardship. He suffers from a neurological condition that causes uncontrollable laughter, for which he relies on social services for medication. After being attacked and receiving a gun from a co-worker, Arthur's life spirals further. He inadvertently sparks a movement after defending himself on the subway, faces personal revelations about his parentage and failed relationships, and ultimately transforms into the Joker persona. His descent culminates into a violent appearance on a talk show, and he murders the host, Murray, on TV, and sparks citywide riots, embodying chaos and unrest in Gotham. The film ends ambiguously with Arthur in Arkham running down the hallway after apparently murdering his newest social worker.
Yeah.
So lots of positives from this movie for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we'll speak about not just the story, because we're writers, we're screenwriters, but also we're DPs. We've been DPs and we've edited tons of stuff and DP'd or filmed.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know what a DP is, we've filmed a lot of things and set up lights and that sort of stuff.
Directed, produced.
And directed and produced. And so we might be all over the place at the first, but what we're going to start talking about first is we usually like to talk about positives, things we liked. And there's a lot here, right, Alex?
No, I mean, there's really, it's pretty much all positives from what I remember. Like, there's a couple things maybe down the way, but overall, like, all we really have for this movie are positives. Like, again, this is a really great film. It's a great psychological film that really kind of keeps you on your toes, so... Yeah.
Okay, so there was a lot of great use of lighting. So before we get into the story too much, maybe we'll just talk a little about the cinematography.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give props to the DP. The DP again is
Lawrence Sher.
Lawrence Sher and Lawrence Sher, and so a lot of great use of color. And contrasting lights. We talked about the warmth in the scenes, like the warm lighting and then the cool lighting, and then there were scenes where Arthur, the main character who ends up becoming Joker, Arthur he's in his house, and they'll have the contrast of there'll actually be parts where there's warm over on one side of the room, cool light coming from the kitchen, and just kind of showing that sort of like unbalance, like you get two different lights, and lights mean different things. Color, like warm looks means like safety, coziness, resolution, things are going positive, and then the cools tend to be more sadness, depression, conflict, nighttime. Yeah. And then there's also green.
Right, and this movie does use green as well in addition to these other ones. Like it uses a great spectrum of all those main kind of color schemes you can see in lights. And green again kind of is used to like showcase, sickness, unease, unrest, all that stuff that kind of goes with, just being unwell. Yeah,
just being unwell, absolutely. So, and there were scenes in the movie where they had warm looks where like in the subway, remember?
Yeah.
When he actually chases down the one of the guys to murder him.
Yes.
To murder, so Arthur Fleck he's killed two of these three just arrogant
Wall Street
finance
guys.
Dudes.
Wall Street guys in Gotham.
And he just shoots them, he shoots them. But then he literally chases after the third one. And when he shoots him, he guns him down. And so there was a choice made there where in the subway, that would typically be like a cool look. It would have, because it's nighttime, it's dark, there's a lot of conflict. But they filmed it with a warm look, or at least presented it with a warm look.
Yeah, so I think, if I remember correctly, like it starts off in the subway car, and these three Wall Street guys start beating up Arthur And they're all drunk, so they're just not in the right head, and they just start beating the crap out of him. And I think it kind of had like a coolish green look to it, and then all of a sudden, like, they go through like this dark tunnel, and you see a couple flashes and hear bangs, and Arthur shoots two of them and kills him, and shoots another in the leg, and then all of a sudden when they come out into the tunnel, it's like there's kind of these warm lights and this orange look to it. And stuff, and so then when he jumps out of the subway car and he's chasing down this one guy who's limping, and he literally chases him down to gut him down, and he empties his clip and keeps clicking even after it's empty and stuff. The whole wall behind him is a nice orange warm color, and that I think was a specific choice by the director and the cinematographer to show that Arthur in this moment is feeling happy, he's comfortable, like he doesn't feel out of place.
Yeah.
Like everything kind of up till then has been a stronger mix of blue with a little bit of orange here and there. And this is kind of the first time where the orange color scheme dominates the frame and surrounds him, is after he murders these three guys.
Straight up kills
and
him.
like then he runs away, and he seems completely happy and kind of unfazed by it. And that was, I think, predicated by the use of this orange light in the whole subway scene. So, no, that's a great point.
And that moment, too, is so cathartic for him. Because throughout what we've seen so far in the movie up to this point, he has been abused. He has makes a point to say, I've been put here on this earth to bring joy and happiness into this dark world.
Yeah.
And what he gets for it is just a punch in the face, a kick in the gut, and misery. And so he has this moment to all this pent up emotion of just being rejected and rejected and rejected. Yeah. He gets to kill 3 people who are the faces of that. And then it's kind of a good moment. And then he goes into a dance sequence in the bathroom, real slow. It almost looks like Tai Chi.
Yeah, that's what you point out. Yeah,
this Tai Chi moves, and it's as if he's got this release of all these years of pent up anger, which I thought was interesting. Jumping back a little earlier in the movie, I know we're kind of we'll run all over the place.
We'll ping pong all over the movie. Like there's no rhyme or reason to it at the moment, but
But what was interesting is that he's a clown, and which clowns are supposed to bring joy to the world, which is his deal. But there's a scene where he's out with a sign out in the street.
Yeah, the very first time we see him.
As
a clown in action.
Yeah, and he's having fun, and there's somebody on the street playing a piano, like clown music, and it's what we consider like practical music, which is pretty uncommon.
Yeah.
Because a practical light is a light you see in the scene that helps to light the scene.
Yeah.
In this instance, you see a clown dancing, and you hear this music, and it could be bed music for all we know. But then there's this guy, he's playing the music, and he's dancing along with the music. And then he gets taunted, and then moments later he gets beaten up by these kids, these rapscallions, so to speak. And
miscreants.
Is there anything sadder, Alex, than a beaten up clown?
No, it's
like that's sad, man.
That's pretty tough. And actually, the saddest part, you pointed this out, is like when he first starts getting. So like he gets smashed in the face by his sign, by these kids, and then they start kicking him on the ground. And you pointed this out, which I never noticed before, is like he grabs his neck, to protect his neck, and he's like just kind of like he's in like a protective state, which means to me that this has happened many times before.
Oh yeah.
And that's even more sad. It's like there's nothing sadder than a beat up clown. The only thing sadder than a beat up clown is a clown who's been beat up so many times he knows how to protect himself from while he's getting beat up, so that he doesn't get hurt even more and stuff. So no, it's a tough one.
Absolutely
tough one for those clowns.
Another real positive too that we talked about was the PD, the production design.
Oh yeah.
And so that was by Mark Friedberg. What an amazing job Mark did.
Oh my gosh.
On
absolutely
this
fantastic.
There's so much busyness and life and clutter in so many of the scenes, so much detail, and it just adds so much to the story.
Yeah, and that's sometimes I think the fear with like having too much in the frame is that it'll draw away from your character from the story, and this does the exact opposite. It
Totally.
adds to the world, it adds to the character, like, the world around him kind of reflects who Arthur is as a person. His life is chaotic and cluttered and just like haphazard, and like they capture that so well with the PD.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm with you on that one. Like the PD is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and then with the office, like the social worker that he meets for the first time, that looked like a storage closet, and maybe that was what it was modeled after. I don't know, but
Right.
but even the files were disorganized. You had some files vertical, some files horizontal, and things
stacked to the ceiling.
Stacked to the ceiling. There was no moment in a lot of these frames, and at the clown office too.
Mm-hmm.
No moment, or no visual moment where there wasn't just detail in everything.
Yeah.
So and it was beautiful. Now they could have gone a way of a sad story, and they could have stripped everything away.
Right.
They could have done like stark rooms, like social worker. There's nothing in the room. The clown office. There's nothing there. They could have gone that way, and I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad
Right.
the choice was to add the detail and not strip it away.
No, I 100% agree with that. Just because sometimes when there is a starkness to a room, when it's an empty room, you just like it gets boring.
Yeah.
And so like especially being a character study movie where not a lot happens, it's his personal struggle with life and stuff like that. Just like again having things to fill the room, to fill the space. Again, it adds like a claustrophobic feel too, and it's just like his world is closing in and just destroyed. Like it's a really really good use of something that sometimes gets kind of disregarded in PD.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. There was a moment too when he's talking to the social worker. She says, "Do you have your journal with you?" And he says it's also an idea book for jokes.
Yep.
And I didn't catch this before, but I caught this the last time we just watched this. Was that his joke was, "I hope my death makes more sense than my life," and he started to write the word sense as an SENSE. And you see it scratched out, SE scratched out. Oh, I'm assuming it was SE.
Yeah.
You see a scratch out, and then he writes the word sense, CENTS, like change,
yeah.
like money. And that's his joke. His joke that he's going to tell a group of people is a written joke.
Right.
Like, you can't say that joke verbally audibly to a crowd, and they would get it.
Exactly.
It's only a play on words on paper. And it's thought, like, that is so, like, between ingenious and idiotic.
Right.
Like, he thinks this is funny. I mean, it's really clever that he writes sense.
Right.
But nobody would ever catch it.
Right. It's completely lost when it's spoken.
Yeah.
Because they're both said the same way.
Yeah. And the first time I saw it, I thought it was an implication that he was dumb. That he didn't know the difference between sense money and sense as in common sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I saw that he had scratched out a couple of letters and wrote CENTS, like he made a conscious decision.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really great revelation into his character of this guy just trying to figure out how to be a funny guy and just not having a clue. not a freaking clue.
Right.
And that's a joke, That's
Yeah.
that's crazy.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man. Again, there's so many like great things about this. Oh yeah. So like, one of the big themes of the movie is just about medication and over medication, and so like they establish that pretty quickly, and they also just do another thing with like showing off his laughing disorder and stuff like that. Like, so he's speaking with a social worker. He's asking about getting more medication. He wants an increase, and she's like, "You're already on 7. Like." You can't do more. And he says like, I just don't want to feel anything and stuff. And so like, that I think is like a very big theme of the film. Is like not feeling anything, being numb to the world and stuff like that, because he hates the world. The world is a terrible place, and so then the irony is that he has this condition where he can't stop laughing.
Yeah.
And he laughs uncontrollably, and it hurts him. And again, like Joaquin Phoenix did an absolutely amazing job. Like
phenomenal.
Like I don't think I've seen any better character acting than him in the Joker. Like that is truly one of the greatest performances I feel like I've ever seen in a film.
Right, when somebody can make it look like they're laughing and being in pain while they're laughing, that's not something you just work up in the moment. That's developed. He worked on that, and wow, it really came through. Obviously, he got an Oscar for it. Not to say
thankfully,
not to say that Oscars are the end all be all of anything, but he clearly did a fantastic job,
and everyone recognized it.
And what was really great, and from a storytelling point too, for those of people who are writing scripts, is exposition is always like this ugly this ugly thing. Hey, we've got to let the audience know a whole bunch about the story right now, about facts and things, so that we can move forward. And so often it's just some scientists talking as they're walking, explaining this, explaining that.
Yeah.
And it's just pretty bland. It's exposition just puking, like, this is... And it's boring.
Yeah, it's usually something that kills the pacing of the story. It's like, here's a bunch of information that'll probably come into play at some point throughout the film. And we're just going to dump on you all in this one little section, and we're just going to say it all and puke it out, and that'll be it. And just feels like, okay, let's move on. Let's get to the next part, because this isn't fun or interesting to listen to, per se.
But, and saying that, like, there was some exposition that we needed to know, the audience needs to know about his condition, right? This guy just laughs. And I think it was really a genius approach, or just a great approach. Not a genius approach, but it's a great approach, is that he's laughing and he can't control himself, and then he hands someone a card to explain the situation, and they actually put the exposition on a card as he's laughing and not wanting to laugh.
Yeah.
This lady who's really mad at him reads this card with exposition that says, I have a condition, I can't stop laughing. Please forgive me, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is a great way to do exposition. Is you build a moment.
Yeah.
And you don't go 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, it's not like 1 leads to 2 leads to 3. Like, we don't know why he's laughing. That's like step 2.
Right.
And then the card after he's laughing fills you in on step 1. Oh, that's why he's being that way.
Yeah.
And so it was a very satisfying, and it was short too. Like, the exposition wasn't
right, and that to me is like the key thing about exposition when done correctly and done in a very interesting, story conscious way, is that it was just a small tidbit. And to me, that's like what the best exposition is like small little chunks kind of peppered throughout the story. So like there's something that came up later on in the story, because as Arthur is walking down the streets of Gotham, there's just trash bags lying everything, like piled high everywhere. You don't know why. It just looks really terrible and stuff. And so he's watching the Murray Show with his mom, which is like his favorite talk show. And Murray makes this joke where he's like, my son, the not so bright one, asked me, or I told my son the other day, that the trash strike is still going on. And my son said, the trash strike is going on. Where are we going to get all of our trash from? And so, again, it's this short little line. Yeah, horrible joke. Short little line that is used to kind of explain the issues of the city and just show what the state of the city is and stuff like that. And again, it's just like that. Like, it doesn't take a lot of time. It's just kind of peppered in there.
Yeah.
And it just kind of helps the audience understand, this is where we're at. This is what this, state of being is for this area.
So once again, it's sort of this kind of like a 2 before 1, right?
Yeah.
We see the 2, we see the trash, and then the 1 comes in. Oh, that's why the trash is this way. Not, there's a trash strike going on, and then we see trash, because it's just not as satisfying that way.
Correct.
One of the things that we talked about too is that how Arthur is really great, how he's so socially awkward. He goes to this comedy club, and even before that, he does a daydreaming thing, but he goes to see comedians to write down how they do their bits.
Right.
And he laughs at the wrong times.
Constantly.
And he's writing down the wrong things, so he's so socially inept. And we find out later that he had brain damage and got dropped and stuff. So, but he's trying so hard, And it was really interesting thing where we really are led to feel compassion for this guy.
Yeah.
For Arthur, this guy. But we find out early that in watching the Murray show, he, to avert this awkwardness, he actually plays scenarios in his head where the way he speaks and talks, like in his daydreams, it all works out to make him look good. Good to talk about that.
Yeah. This is something that I always really enjoyed, and again, on our most recent watching, it just kind of clicked more for me. Is that we see early on he's very bad socially. He doesn't, he like my dad was saying, he doesn't react the way people are supposed to react in certain situations, and he does just these things that are super awkward. And so he starts watching the Murray Show when the first time we see him watching the Murray Show with his mom, and he goes into his head and he imagines himself being in the audience, watching the show, and he ends up, interrupting the show, I love you, Murray, and instead of, and it's because it's in his head, things go great for him. Murray decides to talk to him, and he's like, I live with my mother, and people laugh, and then Murray's like, no, I live with my mother, and he's like, I take good care of my mother, I've been the man of the house for as long as I can, and like all these things go well for him, and he's laughing, with everyone else at the same time, and they're all laughing with him and stuff, and so for me, this was a great storytelling mechanic as well, because it establishes what we're going to see for the rest of the film. We know in reality he is socially awkward. He doesn't react the way people are supposed to react. He doesn't know how to interact with people correctly.
And they don't interact with him
right
in a way that's acceptable.
Right. And in reality we see people that are dismissive of him. They don't listen to him. He's ignored. He's beaten up. He's rejected. And then when he's in his head, everything's going the right way. He reacts the correct way in a social environment, or at least everyone reacts the way he would in that place. People like him, people notice him, people respect him, people, will carry conversation on with him, and that is continued on throughout the film, which creates this great dance, because that was kind of the only one where it's like really denoted that he's daydreaming. Because we see him watching the show,
right?
It goes to the daydream, and then it cuts back to him watching the show, just to establish that it is a daydream. And then as the movie progresses, he keeps daydreaming, but they don't denote it the way they did with that show. They denote it in the way of, he's in his mind when everyone's reacting the correct way and he's reacting to proper social cues. It's reality when he's very awkward and not interacting with the correct social cues.
Yeah, what an interesting concept too, right? Like this whole idea of just using that as a story affect to, and it's subtle. Yes. Subtlety is so great. You don't want to beat your audience's head. No, I said that wrong. You don't want to beat the audience over the head with your, this is the functionality of my script. This is how I'm going to set this up and pay this off. No, it's like, hey, we get a tease. We get a tease of a daydream.
Yeah.
And that's not shocking because, other movies and stories have done that. We've all done that. And it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. He was just daydreaming there. And then it does play into the whole rest of the movie, but you have to be very cognizant of it during the rest of the movie because it's so subtle.
Right.
It's not like they changed everything from a warm look or from like a cool look when he's socially awkward, and then now it's all a warm look when he's in his head. No, I mean you have to decipher through his mannerisms and the reactions of other characters to his character to go, oh, he's daydreaming right now. Oh, this isn't real.
Right, and that, to add on to that, what you're saying, is that you don't always know what's real or what's fake because, again, it just flows one right into the other, and sometimes they combine it.
Yeah, sometimes they combine
it. And so that's the really interesting thing about this movie is that it does take a couple watches because it's like, okay, maybe you watch and you're like, well, why did this happen and this happen? And then you go back and analyze and you're like, oh, that didn't actually happen. That was all in his head. And then it's this, this just ping pong match of what's real, what's not, and then trying to figure out what's the actual story, what actually unfolded versus what he was just picturing things going a specific way.
And there's been a lot of talk about maybe the whole movie was in his head, right?
Yeah. I can make an argument for that.
And so you're gonna make an argument for that. So and props to you for that. But if you really take a look at the movie, and actually study where things go well for him and where things don't go well for them, things start to become more clear. As maybe I have my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that movie played out that it wasn't in his head. I think to me when you study it, it's clear. You have an argument against that.
Again, I can make arguments several ways. I can make it all played out, or I can make an argument that it was all in his head.
Sure,
and
right.
again, it's like I think, I think the interesting part about this movie. It's kind of like the end of Inception. Is he dreaming? Right. Is he awake? It's like, did it happen? Did it not happen? Like, you can make your own arguments, and I don't think anything's wrong.
True. It's movies, entertainment.
I'm sure Todd Phillips out there is going like, oh, I know what actually happened. Like this, this happened, this didn't happen, or yeah, it wasn't his head, or no, all this happened. Like, he can hold on to that all he wants. Like, kudos, man. But we get to speculate, and I think that's the fun part about this movie. Is again, you can watch it in different ways. With like, okay, what if all this happened, or okay, what if this didn't happen, and that can change how you view the movie too. Which again, it just makes added layers to the film, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. I love the setup with the neighbor that he meets in the elevator with her daughter.
Yep.
And she just makes a joke about how miserable the building is, and does the fingers to the head thing. And then he just waits so long to respond to that, and he does it in such an over-the-top way. Like, that's funny. And then, that develops later into this whole idea that when things really go bad for him, he builds this whole relationship in his mind with this woman. And what a great reveal that was.
Oh, yeah.
When you're watching the movie, you think, and you're wondering, you're watching the movie, you're like, what is this woman doing with this guy?
Right.
He's a total misfit. I mean, is she really that... into him and that empathetic.
Right.
There's nothing remotely attractive about the character of Arthur, and yet she's this wonderful, loving, person who's there for him and laughs at his jokes.
Right.
And then we find out later, oh no, that is not the case.
Yeah.
And I think that the way Phillips did this was pretty masterful because if you can see it coming, you pitch it or rework it because your audience should not see it coming. My wife can see things coming and she'll be like, oh, I bet this is going to happen. And I go, oh, no, don't say that.
And then it happens. Yeah.
But it's because the storytelling was so on the nose.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so I think Todd Phillips did a great job.
Right, because it came so out of left field. You thought he actually had this relationship, and like you said, it's like, why on earth would she go for this guy? And then it's like, boom, he sneaks into her apartment, and she's like, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here.
You're
in
the
the
guy
wrong
down the
apartment.
hall, right?
You're in the wrong apartment. It's like, oh my gosh, wait, what? And again, I think that going back to just the idea of what's real, what's not, that whole relationship being starts with him getting out of the elevator and doing like the, whole thing, pretending, doing what she did of like, okay, this is bad. He does this over the top, like bang in his, to the head and stuff, and then she smiles.
And she smiles.
And
she wouldn't smile.
To me, that's a great indication of that was probably in his head.
Yeah,
that probably didn't happen. Like, he probably thought about doing that, and that would be her reaction. But I don't think that actually happened.
Right. So that's a great point you make. Is that in filmmaking, those are actually several scenes. There's the outside the elevator scene, the elevator scene, and then the hallway outside the elevator scene at the end. So those are actually 3 scenes, and it's the elevator sequence. And it is interesting to think that the scene 1 and scene 2 were real.
Yeah.
And scene 3 was in his head, but yet it went so seamlessly together.
Right.
That, you just don't catch it. As opposed to being like all or none. It was, okay, we'll do some. Mm-hmm. Some will be in his head, and some will be in his head, and then some will be reality. And I think that was a really...
Well, the thing is, too, is like he was leaving the elevator. So, it like, to a degree, it was kind of real.
Oh, yeah.
But then, of course, him turning around and doing that and her reaction, 100% was in his head. Like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that would actually happen. And she would smile like that.
But...
Ooh, okay.
But did you get that the first time you saw it?
No.
I did not either. And that's what makes it so good, is that
Yes.
upon further analysis,
Yes.
we find out, oh my gosh, that was in his head. But initially, it was not clear, and that's what's so beautiful about it.
Yeah.
The interweaving of the story and all that sort of stuff.
No, 100% agree.
So, gosh, we're still in the beginning.
Yeah, I know.
Wowzers. Some interesting thing about the initial social worker, he says that she never listens to him, and she doesn't. She doesn't listen to him. And why would she? Like, well, I mean, it's her job, but as this character, this poor guy, he's designed for no one to listen to him. But she says something where she says they've cut our funding, and you're not gonna get any medicine. And then she says they don't give a shit about people like you. And they don't give a shit about people like me either. Which is so telling, because she doesn't say they don't give a shit about people like us.
Yeah,
they said they don't give a shit about people like you, and they don't give a shit about people like me, which means she clearly doesn't see herself in the same
realm. Yeah, not even close to the same realm. Yeah.
And that was just, in terms of storytelling and script writing, that is such a great, well-written piece of dialogue to have. That's just so telling of the reality that he's living in.
Right, and again, it goes to the fact of he doesn't think people listen to him. He thinks people ignore him, and the person who's paid to listen to him is ignoring him.
Is ignoring him. How sad is that? So we got. He meets Bruce. 49 minutes into the movie, we find out, we get this information that Arthur could be, per his mom's words, Thomas Wayne's son.
Yep.
And so that's what, and Mom is faithful, right? We love Mom. He loves Mom, and Mom can do no wrong. And Mom's crazy. That's what she is. She's crazy.
As we come to find out, yes.
So 49 minutes into the story, we find out she says that, hey, you are Thomas Wayne's son. So he goes to meet Bruce Wayne, who is a little kid.
He's trying to find Thomas Wayne, but he ends up meeting Bruce.
Yeah. So, and it was so awkward. And this is one of the points where, we'll just throw this in here, like the little kid question. We talk about little kid questions, the fall or exposed plot holes. Yes. Like little kids ask questions all the time because things don't make sense to them, and we should do the same thing. So the little kid question was, why would Bruce let a stranger put his fingers in his mouth? So it was kind of that scene, I think, was a weak scene.
Yeah, so the way it unfolded, if you don't know, is like he shows up at the Wayne's house, finds Bruce standing outside. He does some stuff, like clown things, puts on a nose, does like some stuff with a wand and stuff like that. And then he gets close to Bruce, and
who's almost catatonic. He's just a kid just staring at this guy.
He doesn't say anything. He's just kind of there. He's dangerously close to this gate, and like Arthur gets down and like kind of pulls Bruce in, and he sticks his fingers in his mouth and makes him smile like he does, like in the first scene in the movies, like he makes himself smile and stuff. And so he does this to Bruce, and Bruce for some reason is just standing there and letting him do it, and it was just kind of weird because
that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I don't know many kids that would let a adult just like make them smile.
Even somebody they know.
Yeah, that's just weird in general.
Can somebody stick my fingers in your mouth while you stand there? No, it's just weird.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think that was in his head either, because right after that,
awkward.
The butler or whatever comes up and says, "What are you doing here?" Blah blah. So it was. So you can't really. Well, I mean, it can't switch gears in something that continuous. So I'm led to believe that really happened.
Well, also he learns information too from the butler, because the butler says, finds out that Penny Fleck is his mom, and the butler knew her and says that, you know, she's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And that makes him freak out, and that starts him down this path of finding out, you know, who his mother is, which comes down later and stuff. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that did happen as well. Because it was very, very awkward.
yeah, because...
And then it revealed real information that he wouldn't have thought up in his head.
Right.
So...
Things didn't go his way.
Right.
And when things don't go his way, we know that it's reality. So,
right.
You know, that was one thing where the filmmaking didn't work out for me, or the storytelling didn't work out for me very well.
Mm-hmm.
So the mom's taken to the hospital, she gets sick.
Yeah.
He talks to detectives, he tries to act cool, and then he runs into a glass door.
Such a great moment.
Which is like, you know, he just tries so hard to be something that it never works out. Cool.
It always goes the wrong way for him.
He almost tries to act like intimidating to the police, but then he runs into the doors. Like, so I thought that was pretty clever story writing as well, directing.
Yeah.
And then we get to the point where he's being comforted by his neighbor as his mom lies in the hospital, and then later that it's revealed that, you know, she's not there. It's all in his head.
Right.
So he's being comforted in his own mind. He's creating his own world.
Yeah, self-soothing.
Self-soothing. Absolutely.
Self-soothing to like the ultimate degree.
Absolutely.
It's just crazy. And then it's in that hospital room that we get the midpoint of the movie, which is where he's watching the Murray Show, and they pull up a clip of him at the comedy show. I guess just established, like, he tried to do a comedy routine earlier, which went horribly because all of his jokes aren't funny at all.
Right.
And he imagined his neighbor once again being at the comedy club, which then kind of built his confidence. And then in his mind, he imagined everyone laughing and stuff, and he gets into his head and he thinks he's doing a great job and doing a great show, when in reality, we saw at the start, he's not funny, he's completely bombing, no one's laughing. And so they get this clip of him performing at this comedy club, and then Murray starts making fun of him, and you can just see how his dream of being on the Murray Show and just like his idol all of a sudden just crushes every last little bit of hope in his spirit as he watches, you know, into the bedside of his, you know, sick mother who had a stroke, you know, his childhood hero, and, you know, the person he wants to meet most in the world, just completely ripping him a new one, saying he's not funny, the one thing he wanted to be and thought he was.
Right. And that literally happens 1 hour into the movie. So in terms
this is a 2-hour movie.
It's a 2-hour movie, and so the story structure, standard story structure for you know, like American filmmaking, is we have a midpoint twist, false victory, false defeat, or a midpoint twist halfway through the movie. So literally at the 1 hour mark point, he gets this moment of high where he sees himself on the Murray Show. This is like the highlight of his life. This is the greatest moment of my life. I'm literally on TV on the Murray Show where people are going to love me, respect me. And then within, I don't know, like 2 seconds, it becomes his biggest low and just rocks his world. And so things really change for him right here.
Yeah. After that, he goes to Arkham because... Or no, he doesn't go to Arkham.
He slips past the
riots. He goes to try to find Thomas Wayne because he couldn't find him at his house.
That's right.
And so there's a demonstration going out, and he walks into this theater where there's a big benefit and Thomas Wayne's at and stuff. And one thing that he does, which I think is in his head, is like he slips past his police barricade completely unstopped. No one touches him. No one looks at him. Just slips right in. Manages to find, you know, a coat and a hat to look like he works there and stuff like that. And then he walks in to the place where they're watching a Charlie Chaplin film, and the crowd's laughing, and then he starts kind of laughing with them at the right moments. And so, again, there's like these bits of he's not actually there, or like he thinks of himself in a certain way, but maybe it's not actually happening the way he thought it's happening. And then he finds Thomas Wayne, and I think that does happen because... Once again, he finds out information that he wouldn't have known to begin with, where Thomas Wayne, you know, tells him his mother was crazy and that he was adopted. And then he gets punched in the face, and then he leaves and stuff. And so it's like, again, just the great use of what's real, what's not, revealing information of, okay, he wouldn't have known that, so this definitely did happen, but maybe some other things didn't happen the way he thought it did.
Right. And the fact where he says, too, I just wanted some warmth. And what does he do? He gets punched in the face.
Yes, nailed right in the face.
Right. Nailed right in the face.
And just irony.
Just terrible.
Just wanted some warmth, Dad. Bam!
I know.
Oh, man.
It was
just brutal. And so then, of course, he goes to Arkham to find out, like, hey, is this true?
Even true?
Yeah, because he doesn't know it's true now. He thinks he's the son of Thomas Wayne, but then Thomas Wayne says he's adopted, and so he goes, and then he finds out, of course, he is adopted, in that his mother, like, chained him to a radiator, and her boyfriend beat him, and
she didn't do anything.
And she didn't do anything. She just watched, and that she had a bunch of mental problems of her own, which led him to become the way he was, and so to me, that was kind of where he finally snapped.
Yeah, that's it, right? Because he found out that his mom was a liar, and he idolized. Well, I don't know if he probably idolized his mother. I mean,
to a degree,
it was his whole life.
Yeah, she was just
and she ended up being a liar and partaker in his abuse, and the reason why he is the way he is.
Yeah.
One of the little kid questions here, which I think was a story flaw, which we've talked about, is what happened after she got arrested, and what happened to Arthur? Did he go into foster care? How did she get him back? Because Arthur said earlier in the movie, I've been with my mom all along. I've been with her the whole time. So that was a little kid question, like, okay, she was there, part of his abuse, and she got in prison for it, or at least started in the insane asylum.
Right.
Did they just hand little Arthur back over to her when she got out? Like, what was his life like in there? And that just didn't add up in terms of, that didn't make any sense.
Right, and just the whole idea of her being able to adopt a kid in the first place.
Yeah, like, how could she
like,
even adopt
how did she get the kid adopted, let alone get him back after, she was committed and he was abused under her care and she didn't do anything. Like, that, like you said, just wasn't really explained.
No, and it doesn't make sense.
No.
So it doesn't follow, because, it is a bit of a fantasy where this is the Joker. Right. But it still needs to follow some paths of logic. So the idea that, at least it wasn't clear to me or you, like, how do you get, because we know people who've lost their kids and they don't get them back. And they wouldn't, like, hey, your kid was abused, it was in the newspapers and the House of Horrors. Oh, here's your kid back now that you're out of, Arkham.
Yeah, and let alone, it's not even her biological kid, it's her adopted son. So it's like, they definitely wouldn't, unless they're that screwed up, like, they definitely wouldn't send him back to her if he was adopted from her in the first place and then received abuse. Like, you wouldn't show up. So that was something that they didn't really explain, and I'm not really sure.
So
what you would do to clear that.
Yeah. So what could you do? What bit of action or dialogue could clear it up? Well, first off, maybe don't make him adopted. Second off, maybe they say that the boyfriend got arrested, the mother was released, and maybe she absconded with him. Maybe she left. Maybe she kidnapped him essentially and left town. Maybe they're from another city, and she once the pressure was on. Instead of them taking Arthur away from her, she took him away to Gotham and kind of hid away in Gotham. So that's something that could have happened where she just took him. Well, and because then you could say, well, yes, he says I've been with her all along, right?
Yeah,
that would make sense, as opposed to him going into foster care or whatever.
Right. And another thing too you could do as well is maybe he wasn't adopted by her until after she was released from Arkham, and then maybe hold on, maybe instead of going by her original name, maybe she forges a different, goes by a different name and an alias to try to apply, and so people don't know who she is, and so maybe Arthur knows her as as Penny Fleck, but maybe her real name's something different, and she's this committed psychotic.
Wasn't she committed though because of his being beaten?
Oh yeah. I guess that did play into it, but
so maybe she didn't go to Arkham. Maybe they were going to, or maybe they were going to bring charges against her, and then she just left. That would be my fix.
I like that one.
Where they're from another city, But then again,
but
the
those records
newspapers,
were in Arkham.
the records were in Arkham, and the city was Gotham.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a tricky one to solve.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure. Yeah, if any of you guys have any ideas how to get out of that one, let us know. Because
and the idea is to do it in a short, clean manner, not like a whole side story.
Right, yeah, we're not pitching a brand new movie of how Arthur simple. And Penny became to be.
How can we keep Arthur with his mom, even though she's psychotic and was arrested for his abuse?
Right.
I don't know. That's a tricky one.
Yeah, it's a interesting one
conundrum for sure. But we move the story forward.
Right, but then of course that leads him to kill his mom.
And that leads him to kill his mom, and that happens. Where did that happen at? We have that in here. Oh, at 1:21.
An hour and 21 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what was interesting about that too is like when he starts to talk with her in the scene, again, back to the use of color, it was kind of blue and stuff like that. And then he kills his mom. And then after that, the room kind of brightens up and like it gets super overexposed and he's just kind of standing in the light and it becomes a very warm look. And again, it's just him kind of comfortable with what he's doing and finding he enjoys that place.
Yeah, and it's not that, and I don't know, you can argue against this, I don't know if it's that he enjoys killing, but he enjoys the freedom or maybe the release of, well, both, the release into freedom from killing. So when he killed those guys on the subway, it was a release, and then he felt free and he danced, and then when he killed his mom, there was this release that made him feel free, but it wasn't like, oh, I love to kill. It was like, oh, I just feel so much better now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it probably is a release, like just all this pent up anger, just again unknowing. Now he knows, and now he, I guess, resolves.
Right.
He resolves his past, in his relationship with his mom, and then it's just that idea of like, freedom of like, I can breathe now, like the things that were making me unhappy are starting to leave.
And so then he starts to practice an entrance into the Murray show because they've called him at this point to come on the show.
Yeah.
And so now he's free from mom. He's going on to the Murray show, but his practices to get on to enter the show are really awkward. And then when the audience laughter becomes more and more intense, then he kind of plays out in his head a little bit better, and people cheer his death is what I've got here.
Yeah, so when he was doing it, like we see, he's kind of doing this cathartic killing. He's kind of feeling free and like I can do my own thing, and so his big plan, of course, is to end his life on TV on the Murray show. Like he's gonna reach the peak of. That's what he wants in life, is to be on the Murray show. He's going to do it, and then he's just going to decide, hey, let's end my life there and stuff. And, like, in his mind, people cheer, like, emphatically when he does that.
Because it's in his brain.
And
he's always right in his brain.
Right, and again, and I think that goes back, too, to his joke earlier of, I hope my death makes more sense than my life.
Yeah.
And stuff. And so, like, I think that is not just a joke to him, but maybe a belief.
Yeah.
That he wants to showcase. So.
Yeah. One thing that was another little kid question was, like a little plot hole, was why didn't he get caught for killing his mom? He kills his mom in a hospital, and then it just. To me, they do come back later.
Well, to me, his mom in the hospital dying or getting killed by him makes more sense that he wouldn't get caught because, again. The time frame, the time period that they set up is like in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
Just with everything. And so, again, it's like, when he kills her, there's no heart rate monitor that, just goes beep. And so it's like, he could have argued, it's like, I don't know what happened. She just stopped breathing. And so, and because, like, she was taken there for having a stroke. And so he could just say, like, she must have had another stroke or a heart attack or something like that. And so, to me, that's not really that's something I think he could easily lie his way out of.
Sure, and so I would give it a pass. That's 100%. not a huge little kid question, but it is a little kid question. Like he didn't get caught, like he just. But it is totally believable that back in that day and age, she could die and we can just move the story forward without dealing with that.
Yeah, and so after that, he's getting ready to go on to the Murray show.
Yeah.
And he seems super free. He's dancing everywhere. He's dyeing his hair, and then
low angles. He got low angles.
Yeah, Canon angles.
Low Canon angles, filming up at him, making him look awkward, yet making him look powerful, and then finally in charge. So we got these low angles looking up.
And so he goes and he gets a knock on his door. It's two of his old clown buddies, and one of them lent him a gun that got him fired in the first place.
Yeah.
And stuff, and so he seems, pretty chill, and they're like, sorry, we heard about your mom. And he's like, no, I feel pretty good. And then he ends up killing the guy who gave him the gun. Brutally,
yeah.
After telling the guys that he's no longer on his medication.
Yeah, so 1 hour and 27 minutes, so like about an hour and a half in, we reach what I call the rally point, which is the turning point into Act 3.
Yep.
And so we got this rally point here. Turning point Act 3. He admits I'm off my meds. I'm off my meds and I'm feeling good.
Been on my meds. Yeah.
And the implication there too is that he's been off his meds.
Right, for a while.
It's
like as things have progressively gotten better in his mind, it's like, okay, he's probably been off his meds because they cut the funding for the social work. He asks, where am I going to get my medication? She doesn't answer him. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of obvious, or at least to some degree, it's implied that he's out of meds and he's not getting any more.
Right, that's from Act 1, I think, isn't it? When she's like, they're cutting your medication.
It was like 45 minutes in.
Maybe 45 minutes, okay.
So that was kind of like in Act 2.
So it's like in Act 2. So we know he's been out for a while. But what a great scene, though, with this whole scene, talk about building tension. Because one of the characters, Gary, he's a smaller guy for sure. And, one of the guys gets brutally murdered, right?
Yeah.
Right in front of him. And then Arthur's like, oh, Gary, you can go.
I'm not going to hurt you.
But they build it in a way so he has to walk through a doorway right in front of Arthur.
And the body.
And right in front of the body and the blood all over the wall. And then he's too short, he can't reach the door lock. And what great way to build tension. And so Arthur goes up, unlocks the door for him, and you're like, oh my gosh, he's going to get out. Opens the door, and then kind of closes it again. And you're like, oh no. And I forget what he asks him.
I don't think he asked him anything. I think he tells him, like, you've always been nice to me, Gary. And he kisses him on the head. And then he lets him go.
And
like, that was such a tense scene. And just imagine what poor Gary is feeling. Like, I'm going to die right here, right now. And stuff. Like, I know who this guy is. I just watched him kill someone I know.
Mm-hmm. And the beauty about tension is that you want it to last as long as it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. You want it to last as long as it's effective, right? If you drag it out too long, then it becomes boredom. Like, we're tense, and then all of a sudden, after a while, like, oh, I'm just kind of bored. And I think that was a really good amount of time, just that awkward amount of tension. He didn't keep him in the room and keep talking to him and all this stuff. But it was good.
Right, yeah, no, the way I like to think about tension is it's like a hill. Tension, there's definitely a peak of tension, and then if you try to hold on too long, eventually you start going down the backside of the hill, and then your tension, like you said, loses its effectiveness. It just turns into boring. And so, again, like that tension just like hit its peak.
Yeah.
Then you think it's going to resolve, and then all of a sudden it gets more tense because he shuts the door again, which kind of shoots the tension up even more.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, maybe he's not going to let him go.
Maybe he won't let him go.
And then he lets him go, and it finally resolves.
Right.
And, like, it was a great just way to really mess with the emotion of the audience.
Right.
And the characters.
Yeah. And we call it, like, blowing up a balloon, and I teach this to my students, too, is you want to blow up this balloon. And this goes for, you can apply this in all different ways of story, is you blow up this balloon, so like tension is a balloon. And if you don't blow up your balloon enough, it's this shriveled little piece of rubber. And if you blow it up just right, you've got a beautiful balloon. And if you blow it up too much, you pop your balloon.
Yep.
And he didn't pop his balloon.
Yeah.
So, and that's a story metaphor. That's all we got there.
Yeah.
So then, all this stuff is going along really strong, and it says the murder is the beginning of, so the murder of, I don't know the character's name, but it was not Gary, but the other guy. That was the beginning of Act 3 of the story, and that's where he's dressed as Joker. He's now become the Joker.
Fully embodies it. Beginning of Act 3 goes to the cops chase him, and then he evades them by putting he's painted up like a clown, but then he puts on a clown mask that looks like all the other clown masks. Yeah.
And then he takes it off, and I thought that was really clever. It wasn't like everybody had different clown masks. They all had the same, and he was painted as a clown who puts on a clown mask.
Yeah, no, that's a fun little moment.
Yeah, so that was fun. And then the cops, so you got like the cops shoot a guy, and then they get beaten up.
Yeah.
So that takes us to the Murray show.
Yeah, and again, he's just like, they do some great reveals about his overall character at the Murray show too. Because he's dressed up as this clown. Murray comes in, he's just happy to meet him. And, Murray's like, why are you dressed like that? Like, are you part of the protest? And he's like, no, I don't believe in any of that. It's like, that to me is where we truly learn what he is about. It's like, he just wants to be happy. He doesn't care about people. He doesn't care about politics. He just wants to feel happy and be good and, like... unburdened, and now we see him kind of truly at that point in the Murray show, from what he's done leading up to the fact that now he's meeting his idol and is about to go on the show that he's watched ever since he was a kid.
But he's meeting his idol in order to make a big joke of killing himself.
True.
So,
right, yeah.
So he's not madly in love with Murray at this point like he was.
Right.
Because Murray did hurt him, and so he wants to hurt Murray by hurting himself, which is kind of a crazy concept.
True.
I'm going to hurt you by hurting myself. That's his intention.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that, but you're right.
So he's a lot calmer than he would have been as if he were a fanboy like he was in the beginning.
Right.
No,
that's true. Like, he does keep his composure.
Yeah.
And, like, he seems to, like, know something that, it's like, I know this that you don't know. And, like, he does keep that composure. And then, he has... kind of like the epiphany of his confidence is like, on the Murray show, he's been working on his entrance, that we saw, and then he finally does something different. He does this weird dance and starts spinning and tapping and makes out with one of the other guests, and just like he lets it all go.
And that in your mind, is that all in his head?
No, I don't think so, because it was so awkward.
It was awkward.
It was really
But he embraced the awkwardness.
Yeah,
maybe.
like he's not afraid of it anymore, and like he knows that's who he is, and he doesn't care anymore. And so I thought that was great too.
And so we have it at 1:36 that he asks to be introduced as the Joker. So this is the first time in the whole movie, the movie Joker, where his persona is the Joker.
Right, yeah, no, he's fully embraced it.
So about 136.
For sure. And so then, what I do like too, again, it seems like he does get a little hurt by Murray again on the show, because he's trying to do his acts and jokes, and then people are telling him, like, oh no, that's not funny, yeah, you can't do that here. And stuff like that. And you kind of see the shift of, he had in his mind, to kill himself as his final joke. And then, like, they tell him he's not funny, or that's not funny, and stuff like that. And then you can kind of tell, like, his plan shifts. Or at least what he's going to do. And so that's when he, of course, admits to killing the 3 Wayne guys.
He just admits it.
Straight up. And embraces it.
And it might be because he wants the attention. Maybe because people are rioting in favor of those guys. But it was really interesting. He's really become a different persona, but still with the brain damage, still with the social awkwardness. Very interesting. And I mean, Joaquin Phoenix, like, I don't even know if you could write that on your script.
I have no idea.
He acts awkward but confident, I guess would be the words. But you need a really solid actor.
Yes.
and whatever however he prepared for that, it was really like a gift of great acting. That because could you imagine anybody else trying to pull off awkward but confident?
No.
Like, I can imagine a few actors, but
I can imagine them trying.
I can imagine them trying.
Succeeding is a different story. Like, many people can try, but
yeah.
actually doing what he did, like, it's just, you don't know.
And he said it was exactly how he imagined it. I have that here, is that he mentions about the Murray Show. This is exactly how I imagined it. And we know the whole movie he's been imagining things all along. So that's like, if you didn't realize, if you weren't really into the idea of all these daydreams he was doing, that's just kind of a throwaway line. But after you've seen it, if you've watched it a few times and go, oh gosh, that's huge. That's exactly how I imagined it. But then he gets rejected, like you said. He gets booed, and then he murders Murray at 1 hour and 45 minutes into the movie. He murders Murray on TV. He's clearly a guy who he is. I don't know if he just doesn't care about public opinion, or if he's so focused, or if he's, because he killed the guy in the subway. Like, he chased him down in an empty subway hall.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't looking around like, is anyone going to see me do this? He didn't even care.
Right.
And he admits that he killed these guys on TV. He didn't care. He just kills Murray, and then he hangs out playing with the TV. Yeah. So it's this really kind of interesting. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It was good. I liked it.
It's one of those things where I think he just doesn't care about himself either. Like, he doesn't care what happens to himself. Yeah. Probably because he's been so beat up and ignored all along that he's just like, I'm just going to do something.
Yeah.
And then...
And he knows he wants to kill himself by the end of the episode anyway. Right. So what does he have to lose?
Right, exactly. And and I think you pointed this out because we were talking about it this morning, and it was such a great thing that, it is a character study, and sometimes those are really hard to figure out, like, what a character's objectives are. And you pointed out quite nicely that his objective was just to be noticed and to feel good. And he definitely got that in the end, in his own twisted way, because, like, he killed these people that, for him, was just cathartic, and that was kind of freeing. He got off his meds, which probably helped him feel pretty good, too. Yeah. And then he was noticed, like, he literally started a movement, and people were dressing up as clowns like him. And then he embraced being a clown, and stuff. And honestly, think about it now, it's like he embraced being a clown over being a person. Like, every time he dressed up for work, he was putting on a mask to become a clown. But then he went back to being Arthur. But then in the end, he gave up being Arthur to just be a clown.
Wow, I didn't actually think about that.
Like,
That's
he never
pretty good.
wanted to be, or he just stopped trying to be Arthur and just became the Joker.
He just became the Joker.
Yeah.
That's really clever. I like that. I like that a lot.
I hadn't thought about that before, but...
And just the idea that people are cheering him on, and when he's outside, he gets, hit on, and people are cheering around him, on the crowd surrounds him around the car, and like, that's all I ever wanted,
Yeah,
but it wasn't him. But they weren't cheering for him. They were cheering for the Joker.
And that's why he embraced him.
And that's why he embraced him, because it's like they were cheering for Arthur Fleck.
Yeah, he gave up Arthur.
Arthur. No, so he never actually got accepted for Arthur Fleck. He got accepted only when he wasn't Arthur Fleck.
Honestly, he started treating himself like everyone else treated him. He started ignoring Arthur and embraced Joker.
Yeah.
He just didn't think on Arthur. He didn't look at Arthur as himself anymore.
Yeah.
He just walked over him like everyone else in society has ever done to him.
Yeah.
And he embraced Joker, who has notoriety, and people listen to and like are starting to riot for, and like all this stuff. Yeah.
And his mom was the last. His mom was the only and last real tie to Arthur. I guess there was the guys at the clown shop, maybe. But they weren't really close. But
they knew more as a clown.
Mom was the only one.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Who'd you talk to?" She's like, "People have been saying." And he's like, "Who have you been talking to?" But you only talk to me.
Right.
They don't get any mail. They don't anything. But that is really interesting how he's only accepted when he's not himself. What a genius commentary too.
Right.
By Phillips and the writers. Because I think a lot of people feel that way. and a lot of people are over medicated.
Yes,
and want more.
100%.
And we've had people in our family, several people just needing those medications and needing more medications and trying to not feel what they feel.
Yeah.
And they tackle this in such an interesting way, taking a comic book character, but not making him a comic book character, and using this as a idea of just rejection and mental illness and all that stuff. So they could have really just beat us over the head with it. Yeah. And I would imagine that for movies post-COVID have been a lot of them are not particularly good.
It's not subtle anymore.
It's not subtle. Message! Listen to what we're trying to teach you! And I think
they used themes in this one. It wasn't a message. It was themes.
And what a better way.
And again, too, and like you said, it can be related to people who are over medicated, stuff like that. It could also be like the idea of putting on a mask and putting on an image. It's like social media. Yeah, people try to feel like they're only accepted on social media, or in this thing, putting on a mask, looking like a clown, doing things to stand out. But then in the real world, it's like, oh, I'm just a nobody, and that's like the thing. And I feel like that has a big social commentary that is underlined in this whole thing too. And
it's become more relevant now.
Yes.
Even than back
100%.
when the film was made, right?
Yeah. All right, so.
Wait, hang on here.
Okay. All right.
Genuinely laughing about it. Oh, what did you want to get to the ending?
Yeah. So.
Okay, so let's get to the ending.
So this to me is where you can make the argument that the whole movie happened in his head. I can also see and I can concede that the whole movie did happen. I think that it did happen. I don't think it happened when it happened. And I will try to explain because that sounded as confusing to me as it probably did to you.
Fair enough. Let's hear what you got.
So, in the end, we see Arthur, he's in the psych ward, he's back in Arkham, and he's laughing to himself. And he's with a social worker, and she's like, what are you laughing about? And it cuts to a shot of Thomas Wayne and his wife dead in the alleyway, and Bruce standing all by himself. And it cuts back to Arthur. This happened during the riot. Arthur never once saw this happen, but somehow he knew it happened. Mm-hmm. And she asked, what are you laughing about? He goes, it's like just a joke. He wouldn't get it. And to me, he could have been in Arkham the whole time. He probably was there because he killed a couple people or killed all those people and got there. But I think in his mind, he knew Thomas Wayne or had seen his image and just kind of hated him for it. And so he concocted this entire narrative that we just witnessed as him doing something that made a domino effect that led to Thomas Wayne's death. And that was funny to him. And so, I think there's an argument to be made, clearly, because I'm arguing it right now.
Fair enough.
That this whole movie happened in his head. And again, this goes back to him wanting to be worth something and to do something of note and to be noticed. That he imagines himself doing something that starts a domino effect that kills someone of note, which makes him someone of note. So in his own twisted way, maybe he didn't actually do that, but he thinks he did because he's in the psych ward, and that he could have done that, and that's funny to him. That's my argument.
That's your argument.
Take it or leave it.
Well,
let me know if you agree or could see at least, to the very least.
Well, I will argue the opposite, and probably mostly because a mentally ill person conceiving ideas where they're abused, and then where they daydream in their abuse that they're not abused, and then they go back, and so having this constant going back and forth between being rejected and awkward and then being accepted. I mean, you'd have to be a madman genius to pull that off.
Okay, well, what if his daydream is made up of things that actually did happen to him, just at an earlier date?
Well, that would be a better argument.
So it's like, he's got all these things, this rejection, these pieces. Now he's just making a narrative that ends with Thomas Wayne dying.
Okay, so I think that's a better argument.
And that, I guess that was
I still don't buy it.
That was the argument I was trying to make. Again, you don't have to buy it. I think there's an argument that could be made that this could have happened.
Yeah, I think it's a well-crafted story that bounces between a man's reality and his mentality, and that it did happen. So, but we can.
I can concede that as well.
Okay, so we can.
Yeah.
We can agree to disagree, and
100%.
I'm sure it's fun, right? I don't like enormously ambiguous endings, but this was fun enough to where, yes, I think some people can argue. Now, do you actually believe that, or are you just making an argument for it? Just out of curiosity, like, do you think it happened, or are you just being really crafty and saying, okay, all these puzzle pieces play into this a possibility?
It's more the crafty. Like, I believe it did all happen, but I think you could make a solid case for maybe it didn't, and it was in his head just because of that one last little image. But again, it's like, again, if you're a filmmaker watching this, take note. Like, single scenes or images can totally be taken out of context.
Oh.
Just like with this, the ending of Lost is a great example of things taken out of context. Like, just be wary. 100%. But, like, I think, that was intentionally put in there. And so I think there could be a great argument and a great case made for, okay, maybe... like, I think a fair amount of things did happen, but you can make the argument that he also was concocting something in his mind while in Arkham.
Sure, absolutely. That's where your argument would be, for sure. Mm-hmm. Like, if you were arguing.
Because, and I will say, too, I forgot about this, but, like, because there is earlier, like, when he's first talking to the social worker, like, the first time we meet him and the social worker together, he was talking about how he felt better at the hospital, and then it cuts to just a random scene of him banging his head against the wall in Arkham.
Oh, my gosh, you're right.
And so it's like... that could be a ping pong thing of, like, maybe he was in Arkham thinking about that and, like, feeling better in Arkham, and he's just thinking this whole thing through.
I mean, okay.
So yeah, I think you could make a strong case for it.
Yeah, but you don't believe your case. You'd be a good lawyer. You don't, I don't believe my client is innocent, but I'm going to argue a really good case that they are. So, and I think that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. Good.
Exactly.
So we have, so that's our thoughts on the movie. Our positives, our constructives.
Yeah, sorry for ping-ponging about so much.
Like, I like it, and I think we went through the story.
I did think we went through the story. Yeah, basically we gave a second synopsis of the story more in depth. But yeah, no, again, I think it was good. Sorry if it was a little confusing at first, but I think we're
figuring out our format.
Yeah, we figured it out. I think it's good.
But this is the point where we got pitch, please, baby. We go. What's up? We gotta give you guys a pitch of So Alex said we haven't seen the
second
Valet Adieu. Joker Valet Adieu. We haven't seen that.
Yes.
And we don't have any plans to see that. Yes, I have limited time in my life to do things, and so I do listen to critic reviews and audience reviews, and I read up reviews, and
Rotten
so
Tomatoes is great.
Yeah, because I gotta make decisions on how I'm gonna spend my time, and I can't just go see every movie. So based on what I read and probably what you read
we've
too,
heard,
we're like, this not something that's appealing now. So we can't criticize it based on anything other than what we've heard. So we're not even gonna go there.
Right. What we've heard is that it wasn't as well received as the first one.
No.
We heard, that people just weren't, like, it just didn't ring true the same way that this first one did. And so that's why we wanted to talk about the first one, because that is a phenomenal film, and we wanted to try to figure out, how we would have done a second one.
So our point in the pitch please section right here is we're going to pitch what our sequel to the original Joker would be.
Yes.
And it has nothing to do with the current sequel to Joker at all. We're not going to try and fix it or talk about it. And so we kind of agreed. This is kind of fun because Alex and we agreed on a bunch of plot points in here, and then we diverged on one where we could go other ways. So
our entire act 3.
So why don't you get us started, Alex?
All right. Yes. Well, we thought that this particular sequel would start in Arkham after the first movie has happened. He's killed everyone. We find him in Arkham, locked away. And in the first movie, we'd seen him grow in confidence and stuff. And so this Arthur that we start with is confident. His confidence has grown, and he's kind of embraced that. So the character arc that we're going to be following is kind of his confidence turning from just pure confidence to manipulation.
Right.
And we're going to try to, essentially what we're doing, like the first movie was basically a character study. This one that we've kind of come up with is trying to go more towards the comic book Joker.
Yeah, not much.
Not much,
but we're going to play into that because...
More so.
Yeah, because that's the reality of Joker. You know, he is a comic book character for sure.
Yeah, so continue on, please, sir.
Okay, so he is going to meet Harley Quinn, a Dr. Arkham.
Yeah, she'll be a doctor in this one.
She'll be a doctor in this one. And he likes her, but she doesn't like him at first. Right?
Right.
And in Arkham, Arthur is hailed as a hero by the other patients for what he did. And he starts to get a following. He starts to get a little gang going on. He starts to get a little stardom. Mm-hmm. And he realizes he's not a nobody anymore. But he also has enemies who see his fame as a growing threat because there's competition in Arkham. So in Arkham, he's put back on his meds, which makes sense, right? He's in a mental institution. He's put back on his meds, which makes him feel like he did at the beginning of the first movie. Okay? Yeah. But he works out a way to trick the doctors so he can go back to being the Joker and not taking his meds. And then we figure he would convince one of the other patients to somehow take his meds for him. And that plays into his manipulation.
Right, yeah. And again, I think in this one we'd use the theme of like over-medication again as kind of an underlying theme where in his mind the medication makes him is the problem for him or is a problem for him, and so he wants to get rid of that to feel the way he felt, at the beginning or at the end of Joker.
Yeah, and it's more like a metaphor, right? It's not like all medication is bad. Correct. It's sort of like, hey, this is what keeps me from being who I want to be.
Correct. Yeah. So, let's see, where are we? All right. So, using kind of this newfound confidence that he has, he starts to work it over on Harley, who, again, she doesn't like him at first, but she kind of understands where he's coming from because she works at a state hospital. Her salary probably isn't that high. She's probably struggling. She's probably getting threatened to lose her job because of budget cuts and stuff like that. And so just working with him and trying to help him and talk with him and hearing his side of things and kind of hearing his, take on life, she starts to kind of fall for it and starts to, fall into a romantic relationship with him. And so that we kind of see that building while his following is building, as well as kind of this enemy gang and conflict and tension are rising in Arkham. And it kind of all culminates at the midpoint with Joker and Harley finally kissing. And in that after that kiss, she agrees that she's going to help him kind of get out of Arkham because she's now completely infatuated with him.
Yeah, so she's locked in. So the midpoint, she's locked in. So he gets his following to grow, but his enemies want to take him out, which leads to a large fight in the Arkham Asylum. Yeah. The whole facility is put on lockdown as the patients try to kill each other. Arthur, being Arthur, just enjoys the carnage, joining in when he's threatened, but otherwise staying away from it overall, manipulating some of his guys and his people into fighting, and just starting to build on that whole manipulation.
Yeah, and so after this is kind of where we start to diverge in our thoughts of how it should go.
Yeah.
And so I see it kind of this turn into Act 3 is that Harley trying to figure out a way to help Joker get out and get released from Arkham uses this prison riot as kind of her appeal. I think there has been this court process going along throughout as like a little thread in the thing, just to determine what to do with Joker because he did kill a bunch of people. And so I think Harley will use footage from this prison riot showing that Joker only, gets involved when he himself is personally threatened, and that everything he did outside of Arkham was also a response to trauma he's had in his past and just defending himself and making a case in which she actually convinces the courts to, let him out, kind of essentially scot-free and find him not guilty and stuff. And so she gets him released from Arkham, and so the public is kind of split on that. And because some people wanted the Joker out because, there's people that believed in his message, and then others want him to be killed for, the problems he caused for killing the Wayne people and all that stuff, killing Murray, of course. And so while he's out, one of the conditions is that he has to continue to be on his meds. And so he realizes that his meds are what makes him not feel like the Joker anymore. And so he decides he wants to get rid of all those medications, and so he chooses to go find the facility that makes the medication because he is still Arthur. Like, he's got some intelligence, but he's not the smartest, and thinks that there's only one place these meds can get made, and so he finds one near Gotham and decides he wants to blow it up so that he doesn't have to take any more meds and can be free to be the Joker and be his normal self. And so what I had was that, while he's in Joker, he met some smart people who just kind of lost it, and he became friends with them. And so with Harley, they come up with a plan to break them out. And in the process of breaking these kind of genius, psychotics out, they end up releasing, like, all the other patients of Arkham into the streets of Gotham. But Joker doesn't care because Joker is Joker. And so using these kind of intelligent patients that like him and stuff, they create some bombs and stuff and end up making it to the plant, and they plant them all, and Joker is ready and he blows it up. But while everything is blowing up all around him, he kind of gets shaken and trips and falls, and he's on a catwalk, and so he tumbles into this vat of some chemical below and falling in, kind of like the vat of acid from the comics, but not entirely, because it is like a pharmaceutical plant or whatever and stuff. And so the last shot of the movie would be him climbing on the vat, laughing and looking like the iconic Joker that we know from the comics. And that would be the end of mine.
So my ending is a little different. And my ending would be that the beginning of Act 3 would be the prison fight. And so that, for me, would be this thing where all the doors are opened in Arkham, and then there's a big prison fight, and it's a big escape scene. And so instead of having you had like a court case and things like that. So mine would just be like an action, where it's like there's a big fight scene, and it's all about escaping and fighting and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And then he does get out with Harley, and then sort of the same ending. In his escape, he runs through a nearby building that had chemicals in it. Then he trips and falls, and the main antagonist that he's fighting, the other gang leader, they have a final showdown of sorts, and then during that he offs this other guy, and then falls into the vat and comes out and emerges as Joker. And then cut to black.
Yeah.
I think that I would have him kill the guy and get his objective first, as opposed to falling in the vat, becoming Joker, and then killing him. It could go either way, but I think the final frame of him coming out of a vat, being Joker, is more of a cinematic movie moment, kind of like yours. So we both want it to end the same way.
Yeah. No,
For sure.
It ties in, we don't know the comics too well, but we know that much, that he kind of falls in this vat of chemicals or something and becomes the Joker. So tying that in just kind of really makes sense to us. And would be kind of cool. And again, it is different. It's not a gritty character study. It's a little bit more of an action piece. Yeah. Still with a character study, but there's more action, more plot driven than character driven, I'd say.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I don't know. Hey, thanks for listening to Pitch Please. We like to share our thoughts with you, and if you think there are better versions of a movie or a sequel that we did, that's great. We appreciate that. If not, if you have a different version or a different way you'd make a movie or a sequel, we'd love to hear about it. You can let us know on social media and in the comments. Let us know what you think about either our pitches, or if you have your own pitch for any of these movies as well. Please make sure that you go and check out these movies if you haven't already. Support those filmmakers that make them. And remember, it's a lot of hard work making a movie, writing a script, and doing all that stuff, hair and makeup and costumes and props and DP and all that. So we just want to give a mad props to all the filmmakers and everybody who works on films out there, because it's awesome and it's really great when you get to make your movie.
Yeah, no, it's easy for us to sit here and just kind of, talk about what's wrong and what's good in the movie, after the fact. It's really hard sometimes to see that in the heat of the moment. So again, yeah, we're not saying that we're right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, this is how we would have done it our way and stuff. And so we'd love to hear if you guys liked it or not. And also let us know what else we should do. We're not doing this just for us, although we do love it.
Yeah.
We want to know what movies you guys want to hear, either a sequel for or a remake of. If you've got a movie that you're like, oh, this was going to be so cool, and then you watch it and you're like, it just didn't happen the way I thought it would happen, and you want to see something or want to hear something that could potentially be better, let us know what it is. Or if you loved a movie and want to see what the sequel could be, or hear what, a possible sequel would be, we'd love to give it. So just let us know what those movies are that you want to hear, and we'll try to do it. Yeah, let us know in the comment section or on social media. And join us next week for our next episode
of Pitch Please.